Time, please. And so happy that you all made it here. And I just want to say thank you and welcome to 2021, the year to make some major moves now. This is our meeting. You may gonna see some of these faces very familiar with it. These are the Canadian icons when it comes to Canadian real estate. And these are the people who have a lot of experience, a lot to contribute. And I want to say thank you each and all of our guest speakers to being here today. And you are going to a lot to learn from them. It's amazing what they're willing to share with you with open heart, and that's the most beautiful thing to it. A little just legal disclaimer, just to let you know, in Canada, especially if you are from all across Canada, it's illegal to operate as a real estate broker or a mortgage broker or security unless otherwise you have proper license. It's illegal to charge a finder fee or to charge a commission or referral fee unless otherwise you have appropriate license. On the other hand, it's perfectly legal to buy a piece of property and sell a property of your own. It's also legal to assign a contract what you have obtained under the purchase and sale agreement. You can also charge a price of assigning your rights with option to buy real estate. Caveat emptor, do your own diligence. Please seek the advice of your real estate lawyer before you signing a contract, unless otherwise you are dealing with a professional real estate realtor or a mortgage broker. They are licensed, they are bonded. Moving forward with this thing, I have this thing, all the information material we are providing, the general source information. We have taken every possible measure to make sure all the information is correct. And we do not take the responsibility in case this information caused direct or indirect damage to you. You're supposed to get verified information and only deal with licensed individuals. Thank you. So this is something being grateful for it. Not in hospital, not in jail, not in grave. Take 5 seconds to say, thank you, God, for today. All right, moving forward. So I'd like to ask you to please just go in the chat box. What would you like to achieve in 2021 in one word? Just go, put in the chat box, please. What would you like to achieve? What would you like to achieve in 2021? One word, please. Abundance, freedom, buy houses, financial health. Okay, excellent. Please keep them coming. Flipping, awesome. Harmony, awesome. Buy houses, excellent. All right, this is great. Thank you. So we're gonna move forward. So what can we expect in real estate in 2021? Be another boom, or it's gonna be one of the worst bursts? Well, this is something where we have invited one of our special guest, Barry Lebo, who has been around for a very long time. And he's gonna be enlightening us shortly though. So in my opinion, the Canadian real estate prices have gone up by 14% or 13.8% in last year, 2020. Would you think the trend will continue? The boom will continue thanks to low mortgage rates and lack of housing supplies. And the reason why it will crash simply because of mortgage deferrals, government income support stop, and high unemployment rate. And one more thing, which is really hurting a lot of Canadians, bankruptcies. According to the latest report, millions of Canadians have to file bankruptcy due to COVID-19 or because of the disruption. And unfortunately, there's not much we can do, but at the same time, see if we can help fellow local retailers, restaurant, hospitalities, and please give business to keep those people alive. So here is my special guest today, real estate professional since 1968, a legend, the Canada's most recognized real estate professional, Mr. Barry Lebo, and he is going to be enlightening us. Barry, this is all yours. Let us know what do you think, what we expect in 2021.
Well, I guess my video's not on. You have to let me on or turn on my video.
I think you are on.
No, I'm static. It shows I'm blocked here.
Okay, let me see what I can do.
You cannot start, it says.
No, but you can speak though. We can all hear you.
Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me. I joke that one of the things I don't usually do is work on a weekend as an active realtor because I avoid buyers as much as possible. And I've worked enough weekends over 53 years that I try to avoid it as much. So this is a rare thing for me to be doing something on a Saturday. But during COVID, I mean, there really is a lot of exciting things to do. It was either the dollar store today or Shoppers Drug Mart. I couldn't decide which one to go to. So here I am. I've been in 53 years in this business. I was first year in real estate. I started in 68. By 69, I got recruited by someone in the mortgage brokerage business. That mortgage business was slow at that point, but they were doing well. They bought the odd house. They fixed it up. They put a little bit of white paint in. They cleaned up, put a few tiles in the kitchen and fluffed it up and sold it. We were called whitewashers. And they said to me, you can't maintain, like I say, I was 21, I sold 100 homes and I burned out. I mean, it was just unbelievable the amount of work I was doing. I was, at midnight, I was putting notices in police stations and bakeries. Are you on shift and can't see houses during the day? I'll take you out during the night, and a list of vacant houses. And I would drive policemen out at 2 in the morning to show houses. And I was very successful doing it. And it paid, but I couldn't do that forever. So I got recruited to come into this company, and it was called WFE Developments. And WFE stood for We Blank Everybody. I never liked that name, but we were huge. And I was a partner, and in a few months, the deal was I become a partner, and we were the largest buyers in Toronto. In our peak, we were buying 13 homes a month. We were buying them, fluffing them up, and reselling them. The purpose originally was not to make money on the houses. The money we were making was taking back first and second mortgages that we were selling off to investors and making our money on the mortgages. But eventually we started making a damn good profit on the houses. Over the years, I opened my own company, and over the years, I've bought, sold, or built, and in the end, I was doing major renovations into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I've owned over 600 houses. And that's a fact. I have a seminar that I do. It's called Barry Lebo, My Fucked Up Life. And I make no apologies. That's just the way it was. And I went broke in the end. And the reason was very simple. There were lessons to be learned. Though here's one rule of real estate, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little facetious. You can almost take a dartboard, take a whole bunch of ads for properties for sale, throw a dart, where it lands, just buy it and hold it long enough. The rule is he or she that holds long enough wins. Flippers, guys that are in for fast bucks, profits, we make a profit, but we make pocket change. I was actually going to write a couple of articles on, I made 1,000% and went broke. I want you to understand that. 1,000%. Because when I bought a house, I put down a down payment. The minute I did everything, I went to two investors who one took the first, one took the second. I was 100% mortgaged out on my houses. I never had money in. I only had to pay my trades. And therefore, if I looked at the deposits I made and the kind of returns we made, they were astronomical, but I lost money in the end. Now, what loses you money? For those of you that are in the province of Ontario that are listening today, I came up in April the 9th, 1974, the Ontario government, which was a conservative government under Bill Davis, was pushed by the NDP, And in a very quick readings, 3 readings in the House went right underneath our noses. Almost no one knew about it. They brought in the land speculation tax. And the land speculation tax, I was 26 or 27. I had 36 houses that I was either going on market or closing to come on market. I went from being a millionaire, and that's the days when $1 million was a lot of money, probably 5-6 million today, to owing over $1 million. I was in the negative $1 million within 24 hours of passing that law because the market collapsed. Now, I have a saying, and that is, in the province of Ontario, behind every successful business venture is a piece of pending government legislation waiting to wipe it out. And in turn, I am very cautious of government interference in the marketplace, because what's ironic about what happened in 1974 was that the market didn't need the government intervention because mortgage rates jumped within a month or two to first time we ever hit 12 and something percent. And what happened is the market itself corrected itself and slowed things down. So a couple of takeaways from my first bad negative experience in real estate. Number one, I had these 36 homes. I joined the Toronto Real Estate Bureau. I was a broker, but I was not a realtor. I became a realtor to put my own houses on MLS. And it took me, one house took me as long as 5 years to get rid of. I had a rent. You got to understand, we couldn't get the rents that we needed to cover the mortgages. So it wasn't a matter of, well, why didn't you just rent them? Some I did. The majority I blew out. And eventually I got out of them. And it took years and a lot of work. And I did not go broke or bankrupt. I paid off my investors. And it was a lot of work. But I learned a lot of things about life itself, about real estate. Number one, you have to hold as long as you can. The markets always rebound. Number two, if you look at the worst time in the history of any, I don't care where you're listening to me from, which real estate board that is prominent in your city or town, if you look at the stats, at the worst time in Canada was probably in the beginning of 1981. We hit 21 and 7/8% first mortgages, 21 and 7/8. And we had a 13% unemployment rate. People were losing their jobs, power of sales and everything. And what do you think happened? House prices went down, volume of sales increased because people, the economists are never right. What the economists fail to tell us is they don't get into the human psyche and they don't understand, especially the immigrant mind. The desire people, I always joke and say, people don't come to Canada as an immigrant just to come to Canada. One of the things that appeals to them, besides a good education, it's a safe country, good medical and everything, is they have a right that's denied them in their own country. And that is either they weren't allowed to buy real estate or they couldn't afford to buy real estate. The desire to buy real estate is greater than what the economists understand. Okay? So that was my first takeaway. So now I go back in and it's after 77, 78 starts getting better again. What do? I got burned. I put my hand right back in. I started buying houses again in real estate. And then 81 came and we got caught again. I got killed again. And that's when mortgages were 21 and something percent. So then we go through the 80s. Now at this point, I built a fair size real estate brokerage. I started a good size appraisal firm, Lebo Hicks, I sold it 11 years ago. Lebo Hicks is still a very prominent appraisal firm. And appraisal firm got so big, we were all over North America. I was flying all over. We were doing a lot of commercial work. Wherever you're listening to me from, I don't care what city you're in, I'd be surprised if I haven't been there because my clients own the apartment buildings, the plazas, the land development. That's the kind of clients I had. And I was buying and I was doing stuff and brokering. By the way, those of you that are real estate brokers, I want you to listen to me carefully. I did not buy and sell under my own brokerage. I did not buy myself. Not only did I not buy and sell myself, I bonused the agents who brought me business. If an agent brought me a deal, the agent was guaranteed, as long as they were not from out of town, the agent was guaranteed they were getting that listing back. So I would pay them 5 or 6%. They'd get that coming in, and they would get at least 5% on the way out. Plus, I'd bonus them. I gave people TVs. I put washers and dryers in their homes. And you're going to look at me like I'm crazy, but Barry, the commission, ladies and gentlemen, you can't bird dog. There's only so many hours in the day to find deals. If you want to really do deals, you let agents know, I'm a buyer. I'm not sharing in your commission. I'm not taking a piece, because they're going to look for deals for you. And I wanted all those people out there working with me. I've had agents that have sold me as much as 100 homes over the years, a brokerage, not agents, but brokerage. One agent's did about 35 deals with me, bought, and that means 35 deals they sold. And without exception, the only time I broke my rule is when I was on the verge of being completely bankrupt in the 70s, where I had to take over and sell my own houses because I was in dire straits. So I never broke those rules, though. So I always believe that if you're an agent and you want to make money in this business, detach yourself and let other people do the work, because they're going to find deals that you can't find. Okay? The other thing was that I found out something else. I am a good hustler, I'm a good promoter, and I'm a horrible manager. I don't like administration. I'm not a landlord. I've been a fair-sized landlord. I had a 53-suite, beautiful building in Milton. I've had plazas. I've had a couple of apartment buildings, and I've had a fair amount of single families that I cut up into 3 suites. I'm not a manager. I'm not good at it. And I should have used outside management. Sometimes I did. But in general, I didn't like tenants. I'm sorry. I just don't like to have tenants. Today, I invest my money into mortgages. I get a very good return. I sleep nights. I don't have anybody has my phone number to tell me that at 2 a.m, hey man, we're having a party and we got the fridge isn't making ice. I don't want to hear that stuff anymore. I've been there. I was always good with a tool belt. I'd go down. I could fix anything pretty well. And you know what? I got tired of it. So you got to be young, you got to have legs, and you got to be handy. So where I'm going with all this is, if I had to do it all over again, you buy 5, 6, you flip them, and you keep 1. You buy another 5, 6, and you keep 1. And you keep keeping 1. Now, the mistake I had was we flipped. And I flipped because, as a former kid selling newspapers at 12 years old and having 2 paper routes, all I've ever known in my life is that you got to have some change in your pocket, because you put your hand in your pocket, you like to hear the coins, you like to hear the change. Because as a kid, I always knew as long as I can hear some coins in my pocket, I was a rich boy. So as a man, I was always looking for I was always looking for change. So as long as I made a profit, I sold the house. It was that simple. But in hindsight, the real estate agents made a lot more money than I did in a lot of the houses. I started getting into some very, very heavy renovations. I sold houses to famous people. Peter Mansbridge, who was one of the best known Canadians, heard about me, came to me, and the agents were good. They used to bring me the clients and say, work with them. I'd take the clients out. The agent would bring me the client. And this is in the last years of the major renovation. At one point in Toronto and Riverdale, 1 out of every 3 renovations was mine. It was that simple. And what I was doing is people would come to me and they'd say to me, can you design a house for me? And I would do all the work, get everything ready. I'd make a deal with them, shake hands. We'd go for dinner, everything. I'd spend a day, show them the houses I was renovating, show them houses I was going to buy, show them houses that I just finished. And in turn, I then turned them back over to the agent who signed up the paperwork. And that was it. Peter Mansbridge came to me from Cabbage and wanted to buy a house in Cabbagetown I had. And we sat down. I designed a house for him. Don't get into custom renovations, folks. It's a lot of work. Today, I would change my tune about custom renovation because the software out there is phenomenal. And ironically, today, as a real estate broker and an active real estate broker, I'm going to throw a plug in for myself here. I'm 74 years of age as of next month in February, and I'm still in the top 4% of Canadian realtors. I work very hard. I come in with crews. We do a lot of seniors, a lot of hoarders. I help the families downsize. I get rid of all the stuff in the house. We sell off. And in turn, I bring in my contracting crew and we rip out the old carpets and we start changing baseboards and we paint. And yes, I've gone out and changed the appliance. You name it, we've done it. And I've got the crews for all that. And so I'm back in doing renovations that I never wanted to do. But today, because of software, I could do it much more precise. As long as, until, you know, you can always do a reno until one thing, you open the walls. Oh, can that fool you? By the way, never chintz. What we found when we were doing the renos was it got to a point, it was a simple way. I bought the box, not the house. I bought the box. We stripped it right to the studs. And then we started rebuilding. It was cheaper, it was faster, and it was cleaner, and it was much more modern. And it was so much easier trying to run wire through walls and breaking up little, you know, every few feet, putting a hole and pulling wire. And what a stupid way to do things. It doesn't pay. So where are we today? Deals are getting harder to find. Mm-hmm. In Toronto, where I sit right now, I've got an investor. He wants me to sell his headache property. He's had it for 30 years. It's time to sell. And it needs a lot of work, and it's time for someone else to take it over and spend a fair buck to bring it up to standard. And he says, if I sell it, where do I put my money? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And right now, I'm having a little bit of a problem with that for the simple reason that honestly, I'm having trouble finding him a place because he doesn't want to go outside of Toronto, of central Toronto. I can't even get him to go east or west. So going into another community is not for him. Some of my friends are in Windsor. Some of my friends are investing in Kingston and all kinds of places. He's not going to do that. So Toronto has become a bit of a problem. And with that said, I don't know what else I could tell you as far as what's going to happen in 2021. I joked about this the other day. I could sit here right now and I could fight and argue 100% why the market's going to collapse, mm-hmm. and why the market is on the verge of, the whole Canadian economy is on the verge of collapsing. Yeah. I can then turn around, get up from the table, go to the other side of the table, and I can argue how good things are going to be. In other words, there's a pro and a con to both sides of the argument. Ladies and gentlemen, no one can predict the future. And here's what happens. I'm going to tell you this. One of the greatest real estate firms that ever existed in the Canadian history was Manor Martel. They were giants. And Manor Martel became Royal Trust. And Royal Trust, of course, became Brookfield and everything else. And it was a giant in its day. And Paul Martel told me way back when things were really depressed and another time when things were really good, at any given day, at any time, there's always a good deal to be found on any market, because we don't know the circumstance of somebody's, I hate to say misfortune, circumstances, whatever. Somebody's going through a bad divorce. Somebody's health is failing them. There are a tremendous amount of people out there that have no family and are aging and have to sell or are being put into homes. So there are deals out there. And the thing is, you've got to ferret. That's why I come back to what I just said a few minutes ago. That's why I would always use a good realtor, because that realtor is going to be working for me. That realtor is going to be bringing me deals. So am I going to begrudge the commission? I'm thankful to pay them the commission. Let them get their 5% coming in. Let them get their 5% going out. And I'm going to take them out for dinner when COVID's over. And I'm going to look after them because I want them to bring me more business. That's what it's all about. So don't chintz with the real estate agents. Not because I'm a broker, because I'm not looking right now for investors. It's not my marketplace. My marketplace right now is more focused on seniors, litigation, family wars, commercial stuff. So what I'm saying to you is, though, never begrudge somebody else's commission. Let somebody else make a buck, you make a buck. I'm open for questions, and I don't know if I should go to chat or just you're going to open up for
yes, Barry, you can go to chat actually. And since we are a bit pressed for time today, we have quite a number of speakers. I want to say thank you, Barry, so much. Finally, I got to speak to Barry Lebo. I've known each other for many, many years, but never got a chance.
Yeah.
We are actually Facebook friends more than anything else, actually.
Facebook has made some great friendships. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I say thank you once again, Barry. It was great. It was great, insightful. I remember Bill Davis in 1974 when the property value dropped down, and maybe we're going to have another session about all the crashes we have in Canada, and we'd love to invite you back again. Thanks, Barry.
I've testified in a lot of court cases about that. About the judge actually said to me in one case, Barry, Mr. Lebo, can you tell us when the next boom is coming? I said, Your Honor, I'm under oath. It was a sort of a flippant thing from the judge. I said, Your Honor, I'm under oath. I cannot tell you when the next boom is coming, but I can tell you when the next bust is coming. And the judge, Gloria Epstein, looked at me and said, Mr. Lebo, I'm sorry I asked the question, but answer it. Your Honor, the next bust will come when I personally start investing heavily again in real estate.
All right. Thanks, Barry. Really appreciate it. You always bring a little laughter to everybody, no matter what. And thank you once again, Barry. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me. I'll stick around for a while. Thank you.
Thank you once again. Appreciate it. Now, moving forward, my question to you, how many of you have a mentor? What does the mentor do, by the way? And literally everybody who has a successful coach, by the way, Bill Gates have it, Oprah Winfrey has it, Steve Jobs have it, Warren Buffett had it, Michael Jordan. My question to you, who is your Canadian real estate coach? The coach is somebody who's doing the deals, walking the walk, talking the talk, not only doing something what we call is giving you something what you want to hear. That's not coaching. Coaching is somebody who have done the deals, been in the trenches, know how to deal with you and walk you through the deal by deal basis. So that's what I just thought I should show you. And one more thing they are talking about is this, habits. People talk about resolution of 2021. The habits are formed in the brain, and discuss how human brain has evolved over time. Habits are formed and stored primarily in the basal ganglia, in the base of your brain, by the way. And one thing I like to leave with you, as a human brain has evolved over generation, new layer has been added to the called outer layers neuron tax. And so the best advice for you in 2021, don't bother with your resolution unless otherwise you can complement it with daily habits. The most powerful way to change your life, change your daily habit and practice. Life happens one day at a time, and success achieved one step day by day. So it takes me to the next speaker, my really good friend, Rory Sheehan, who is the best-selling author and 5 times winner of the Reader's Digest. Rory, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am. Thanks.
It's all yours, my friend.
So the video isn't working, so it'll just be my voice, I guess. So,
yes, please.
It was nice to hear Barry speak. Barry and I have been friends on Facebook for a long time, but I think this is the first time that I've actually heard him speak. I've read his thoughts on Facebook, and it's always been nice to read what he has to say, and it's very nice to hear his thoughts today. I just want to take a few minutes to share some ideas with you guys as we start the new year. And it kind of builds on what Nav was just sharing with you. If you want to achieve something you've never achieved, then you must become somebody you've never been. And what that means is that you have to step out of your comfort zone. So right now, each of us, myself included, we all find ourselves in a comfort zone. It doesn't mean we're necessarily where we want to be. It just means we're comfortable there. And psychologists will even refer to this as learned helplessness. And what happens is you find yourself in a comfort zone, and then the fear of stepping out of that comfort zone becomes so great, you just accept that fate and don't do anything to step out of that comfort zone. So here we are, we're all involved in a real estate investment program. but only a few people are probably actually going to capitalize on it. So all this knowledge, all this information, all these mentors, all these coaches, all this support, yet we're not going to capitalize on it. So why is that? And it really comes down to that fear of stepping outside of our comfort zone. And I want you to think about something. What happens is we develop an excuse that becomes our go-to socially acceptable excuse. And really, it's just an excuse that allows us to stay in our comfort zone and do what we've always done. And right now, start of 2021, we want to start stepping out of that comfort zone. So I want you to think about your socially acceptable excuse, that excuse that you've tested and practiced, that there's no argument. So for example, if somebody says you should look at this opportunity, there's a group of us doing it together and we'd like you to be involved with it. And your first reaction is, well, I can't. Then you're going to say because. And whatever you say after the word because, that's most likely your tested and proven excuse to prevent you from stepping out of your comfort zone. So I can't because, I've got kids at home and I got to be very careful of the kids. When you start talking about kids, it becomes very difficult for somebody else to argue with you. So they just accept it. And as a consequence for you, you end up staying in your comfort zone. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is, first off, acknowledge that that's just an excuse. Acknowledge that you've tested it and you've practiced it and you've got really good at an excuse that people won't argue with. They won't give you a hard time over. They'll just accept it. And it allows you to stay in that comfort zone. So what we want to do is we want to start by acknowledging that it's an excuse, and then understand that when we step out of that comfort zone, it's perfectly natural to feel uncomfortable. The key is not to feel overwhelmed. So if you take a step out of your comfort zone and you feel overwhelmed, that just means you took too big of a step. So starting now, what you want to do is feel what you feel when you step out of that comfort zone. If you go, oh no, it's too much, I'm feeling overwhelmed, then acknowledge that you just took too big of a step. Break it down, take smaller steps, and create a plan that allows you to take smaller steps so you can build some momentum as you move out of your comfort zone. You expand that comfort zone, and that's how you're going to start achieving the goals you want to achieve for 2021. Because if you don't step out of your comfort zone, we don't have to be psychic. We can predict what 2021 is going to be like. It's going to be pretty much like 2020 and 2019 and 2018. So in order to create a new future for yourself, you must become somebody you've never been. And that means stepping out of your comfort zone. And the most effective way to do that is to acknowledge that you're using excuses to keep yourself there. Recognize that when you feel overwhelmed, you just took too big of a step. That's all you did. And rather than giving up and running back to your comfort zone, just acknowledge that you took too big of a step and break it down into smaller steps. And then take smaller steps so you always feel a little bit uncomfortable as you step out of that comfort zone. So I just wanted to encourage everybody today to recognize those excuses that you're using, especially the ones you've practiced so much, and recognize that in order to change the outcome for 2021, you must step out of your comfort zone. And that means you must feel uncomfortable. If you feel overwhelmed, just take smaller steps. If you're interested in these ideas, I just this week started a YouTube channel. I'll post the address in the chat. And if you could subscribe. It just started on Tuesday, so we've got a total of 49 subscribers right now, which apparently is pretty good for the first few days. So if you could join, that would be really helpful. It doesn't cost anything. And apparently, according to YouTube, it's best to get to 100 as quickly as possible. So if you enjoy this type of information and you can help get us to 100 as quickly as possible, it will be much appreciated. Nav and I have a plan for things moving forward about topics that I'll share with you. And in the next long session that I'm going to be walking you guys through, we're going to talk about fear and how to manage fear so that it allows you to grow rather than allows you to shut down. And we're going to look at some very interesting techniques in order for you to step out of that comfort zone, manage fear, and move forward. So I hope you found this interesting. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to stick around for a bit. If not, I wish you the best, and I hope you have a fantastic 2021. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Rory. Really appreciate it. That's Rory Sheehan. By the way, he's one of the best friends I ever had. One of my coaches, as a matter of fact. He has helped us and he's helping us. And I can say that he has been my coach. I get mentoring from him at least once or twice a month for a very long time and get me kind of my path very clear as well. Moving forward, we have some special guests, Gary. He's the gentleman I just come across, the best man I ever come across when it comes to real estate investments. Today, I'm gonna get Gary. Are you there, my friend? Jerry, sorry.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Great. So Jerry, I just come across a deal, and that deal kind of, we have done it many times over, and this deal was something to the probate. Since most of you know that because the probate, it takes forever to get the approval from the courts. Because of COVID-19, I have seen some deals being delayed up to 16 to 18 months. Really, it's about 6 to 8 weeks time in Toronto. But now we are dealing with a different ball game altogether. And there's going to be, I think, a flood of opportunities once everything is kind of settled down and everything starts opening up. But today, Jerry is going to be sharing his wisdom, tremendous amount of knowledge, incredible amount of wealth. Jerry, it's all yours, my friend.
Thank you very much for the intro. Thank you very much. Yes, probate. So you asked me to speak a little bit on probate, and that is obviously a topic, a topic to better understand at any time. But certainly in today's environment, it's a topic to better understand even more so now. Let's go back to Probate 101. What is probate? We'll chat about that a bit and really how it affects all of us because we're all real estate investors. Probate is just one part of. We have to recognize that probate is just a part of an entire process of transferring assets from you to your estate. Okay, so probate is just one part of that. Probate is actually, in simple terms, it's the proving of a will. Okay, it's validating a will. It's validating the executor. Okay, it basically provides the final ruling on division of assets to beneficiaries. The probate process is done through a court. So in a typical estate, somebody passes away, their assets go through their will, and then we have to decide if probate applies. Probate does not necessarily apply to every estate. Probate really is dictated by who is involved in selling or transferring the assets of your estate. Okay. Now, with that said, let's just go back and let's talk about, let's just kind of paint a picture, a typical scenario that applies to all of us. Okay. We all build assets. We all, assets such as real estate, but other assets too, our principal residence. We might have mutual funds. We might have assets, a cottage, rental properties. So we all build assets. All these assets are owned, in simple, I'm just trying to simplify the concept. All these assets are owned in one of three ways. We either own them individually, we either own them through a corporation, or we either own these assets through a trust. Okay, those are the three ways that we own assets. Most of us, I find most people own their assets individually. Okay, now we deal with probate and we deal with estates when somebody dies. Okay, let me back up. We own the assets in three ways, either through a corporation, either as an individual, own them ourselves, or a trust. Corporations do not die. Trusts do not die. Individuals die. Okay, so we deal with probate certainly with individuals because they die. So again, corporations don't die, trusts don't die. So we never have to deal with that with a corporation or a trust. Now, with that said, most people will own their assets either individually, or if they have a corporation, they'll own their assets in the corporation. Now, think about what that means. If you own an asset, or if you own a corporation, and if that corporation owns one of your assets, you own the share. Okay, you own a share of that corporation. And let's just keep it simple. Say it's your corporation alone. So you own 100% of the share of that corporation. That share is an asset. Okay, so when you die, that share is part of your estate. Okay, along with everything else you own. Now, when we go through the estate, again, probate, first phone call a lot of times is to a lawyer. Doesn't necessarily have to go through a lawyer, but we find most estates do. And who makes that phone call? It's the executor. Okay, now let's just back up a little bit. When someone is alive, we can appoint somebody as our power of attorney for either our finances or for our medical. Okay, most of us are probably aware that there's a financial power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. That applies when we're alive. The minute we die, those powers of attorney are gone. They have no rights. They cannot do anything for us when we die. The minute we die, the executor that we have chosen through our will takes over. Okay, so they're going to go through our estate. They're going to make a phone call to a lawyer. We have to basically list all your assets. And before we can distribute those assets, most times we need to go through a probate process. Okay, what is the cost of probate? Okay, probate, again, what really happens in through the course of probate is we go to the courts and we say, you know, John Smith has died. Here's the listing of John Smith's assets. The courts will go through the will. They'll look at all the assets, and in simple terms, they'll put a stamp of approval on it. Okay, that's the process of probate. Once that stamp of approval is on it, now the court has given authorization to distribute those assets based on what they have approved, which 99 times out of 100, which is what is written in the will. And the courts will charge for that service. Okay, and their fees are not cheap. Okay, the first $50,000, there's a 0.5% probate fee, 0.5% of the first $50,000. Anything above that attracts 1.5% as a probate fee. So keeping it simple, $1 million estate would attract $14,500 of probate fees. Okay, so that's a cost that comes right out of your estate. But on top of those fees, we always see lots of legal expense relating to probate. We see lots of disbursement expense relating to probate. So that 14,000 can almost be doubled by the time the lawyers are done with the probate. You go to court and all the disbursements. So it's a very, very expensive cost. Okay, so needless to say, and so not only is probate expensive, what Nav had alluded to too is the time frame. Okay, especially today with so much of the stuff in the courts just delayed or pushed, you know, probate is just something that's pushed to the back burner. In regards to real estate, if somebody passes away and they have a real estate property, during probate, you can negotiate the purchase or sale of that property. You can enter into a firm written agreement, but you cannot close on that property until probate is completed. And sometimes we see that takes beyond a year. So there's your property. You want to buy it. Someone has passed away. You're ready to take over the property. The people, the beneficiaries aren't interested in looking after this property. And all of a sudden you've entered into an agreement to buy and you can't do anything with it for 6 months or a year or more than a year. So needless to say, that creates a huge problem. Now, what we try to do always is avoid probate. Okay, we try to structure people's affairs that we don't have to deal with probate. Now, what's the easiest way to do that? Okay, first of all, anything that is, so back to what I said, we own assets in three ways. We either own them through a trust, we either own them through a corporation, or we either own them as an individual. If we own them as an individual, we can either own them ourselves or we can add somebody else's name on title. Okay, joint ownership. We can put a spouse on title. We can put somebody that we want to give the property to when we die on title. Okay, if an asset is jointly owned, it does not go through your estate. It does not attract probate. Okay, so that's a very important point. Okay, so I'll repeat that. If we have an asset and if there's a second name on that asset, when we die, that asset goes to the person whose name is on title, not through your estate. Okay, good and bad to that scenario, because we do that a lot. But when that asset goes to the other person that's on title, it doesn't go through your estate. It might not go to the beneficiaries that you want it to go to, because your will state who the beneficiaries of your estate are. Your will governs your estate. Anything that is jointly registered does not become part of your estate. Okay, very important to recognize that point. Okay, so that's, when we talk about estate planning and trying to save probate fees, those are things that we talk about. Another very important component again, corporations, so I'll back up again. Again, we own property either through a trust, through an individual, or through a corporation. Now, if we have individual assets, and if we own a share of a corporation that has rental properties in it, we normally suggest using what we call multiple wills. Okay, multiple wills is more than one will. Okay, and we do that to avoid probate. Okay, and what I mean by that is if we have a multiple will, let's just say all your real estate assets are in a corporation. You own a whole bunch of assets in your corporation. Your corporation's worth $2 million, whatever it is. Using a multiple will means that share of the corporation will not attract probate fees. We can transfer that share of the corporation to somebody else without attracting probate. You have to use multiple wills for that to happen. If you do not use a multiple will, if you only have one will, all your assets will go through that one will, through the one estate, and it will attract probate. So in the example that I just suggested there, we got a big probate problem if we didn't use multiple wills. The share of your corporation, which we had said is worth $2 million, would then go through your estate, and we'd be paying $28,000 in probate fees on that, plus probably another, we'd be paying close to $50,000 of fees just simply to transfer the share. We haven't even done anything with the properties in the company. That's just transferring the share to whoever you want it to be transferred to. So multiple will, if you have a corporation, multiple wills are essential, okay? So, I mean, I can keep talking, Nav. I don't know if you want me to entertain some questions or.
Jerry, because of the setup today we have, your question will be on in the chat.
Okay, so I see somebody asking me minimum age of a person. 18 years is the legal minimum age for a person on joint ownership. Multiple wills, what's the reason? Again, we save probate. And again, let me back up. We own assets, trusts, individual or through a corporation. The assets that we have in a corporation can transfer directly through an estate without probate if we have a multiple will. Now, let's also talk about what happens when we die. Okay, when we die, the Income Tax Act has deemed us to sell all of our assets. Okay, so basically when someone passes, we have to do a list of assets. We have to determine the fair market value of those assets, and there's a deemed sale. and we have to recognize that. So there's tax implications when you die. There are probate implications when you die. And there's many things that you can do about it. For example, let's talk about assets other than real estate. So for example, you have an RSP with mutual funds in it, or you have an investment account with stocks and bonds in it. The RSP, every registered plan that you have must have a beneficiary, have a named beneficiary, okay? Every registered plan, registered being an RSP, a LIRA, locked in retirement account, which would be a pension account that you have if you work for a big company or the government, RESP, registered education savings plans, TFSA, tax-free savings account. Those are all what we call registered plans. They have, all of them have a requirement for you to name a beneficiary. And when you name a beneficiary, you can either name a person or you can just name your estate. Okay, if it goes to your estate, it's going to get caught under probate. If you name a person, a spouse, a child, then that will bypass your estate and it will not be subject to probate. Okay, so that's very, very important. A life insurance policy, okay, same thing as registered plans. You have to name a beneficiary, okay, and that beneficiary, once again, can either be a spouse, a child, anybody that you want to name as a beneficiary, or you can say the beneficiary of my life insurance policy is the estate. And guess what happens when that money from the life insurance policy goes to the estate? Yes, it's going to be subject to a probate fee. Okay. So there's so much planning involved with, and especially with real estate. I know a lot of people like using trusts. Trusts, again, never die. So it's not a bad idea once you factor in all the other considerations and reasons why you may want to own real estate in a trust or a corporation to utilize those vehicles. Obviously for many other reasons, but for estate planning reasons. Okay, so let me just see some other questions here. So since the grantor, does the named trustee pay tax on the res? Res being principal residence? I'm a little confused. There's a question there, Nav. I don't know if you can see that too. Named trustee pay tax on the res. Yes. Principal residents are exempt of tax. Okay, we still have to recognize the fair market value, the adjusted cost base. We still have to recognize the gain in that asset. It's free of tax if it's a principal resident. Since the grantor removed ownership liability, I'm not really certain what that question is. If that person could maybe expand on that. The grantor, grant is used in the terminology of probate. Basically, the court will grant probate. I'm not exactly sure if that's what you're asking, but that's it says, can you please explain a bit more exactly what you mean by multiple wills and some example of how they're implemented? Okay, so I just went through this past week with a client. So here's the example. So I have a client, they have a corporation. I go in, I value that corporation. It's probably worth $5 million. So we go and he wanted to update his will, and it was a new client, and he only had a single will. So I mentioned to him, I said, hey, you only have a single will, which means you're $5 million. So this client owns the share of his company. So the share itself is an asset that is going to be recognized in his estate. So I said to him, if we don't do anything here, that share that's worth $5 million is going to go to your estate, and you're going to attract probably something like $150,000 of probate fee on that share. So he just had the one will simply by creating a second will. So a multiple will is just a second will. And that will, the second will, addresses only the share of the corporation. Okay, so basically, will number one can deal with everything else this person owns. Will number two will simply deal with the share of that company. Okay, and that in this case would save this person $150,000 of probate fees. And that's really the only reason. I mean, there's a whole bunch of, there are other reasons why we use multiple wills, but for very different, complex, and differing reasons. The primary purpose of using a multiple will is to avoid probate on the value of the share that you own of a corporation that in all probability owns a significant amount of your assets. And it can also, the share of that corporation can be to, the corporation might hold your rental properties, but it's also a company that can operate your business. So if you have a business, through a corporation, once again, you as a person own the share of that corporation. We as accountants, on your demise, we have to value that corporation. So it can be based on the rental properties you have in that corporation. But if you have an active business and if you're making good money, your corporation is going to have significant value just based on the value of your company. Okay. There's a question here. Have you dealt with tiered trust structure? Yes, different tiered structures. I can get into that, but it's probably doesn't apply to a lot of people. Trust's really owning trust, and we transfer money through different trust structures. I just want to keep this discussion pretty simple. Again, I go back to what I said. We own assets in one of three ways: individually, through corporations, or through trusts. Okay. Now we also got to remember, when I say that, I don't want everybody running out and going, oh, I heard I should move everything into a trust or move everything into a corporation. When we transact between trusts and corporations, we have to transfer those assets in at fair market value. That's what the income tax requires us to do. Okay, so they are tax planning tools. They are very effective estate planning tools, but we have to look at them in the context of everyone's individual circumstances. The best thing is to use these tools early on in your, in your growth of assets. If you've grown a whole bunch of assets individually, and now we want to use corporations and trusts, you're making it a little bit more difficult for us because we have to transfer those assets at fair market value. When we do that, we can trigger deemed dispositions, which we don't want to do. We don't want to prepay any of that tax. So I don't know. I think I've covered, I'm kind of at my time allotment now, but I don't know if you want, I can keep going, but I want to be respectful of your time.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. Those who got questions, please call him directly. Jerry going to be on the chat for a short while. Otherwise, you have direct number, Canadian Investor, CanadianInvestmentServices.ca, or the phone number is 416-979-7426. He'll be more than happy to take your call. And again, this is a very personal matter when it comes to your trust. And we were talking about the probates. When somebody dies, what happened to the property if the property has to go through the probate process? This is something most of us will be facing, whether we are buying a real estate or selling a real estate, or we are inheriting a real estate. And recently we have a few deals on the table where we cannot do anything because we have to wait another year and a half until the probate process gone through. Jerry, thank you once again. Really appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, you're very welcome. I'll be hanging around. So if anybody wants to ask a question, I'll watch on the chat bar.
Yeah, please go in the chat. Thank you so much. Now, the next person I will bring to you, finally, this is a lovely lady. And when she was single, separated, starting from scratch, leaving her husband, and can discover a simple formula that created her a financial independence in first 3 years of real estate investing. This is the lovely lady. I've known it for a while. Very proud of that. I know her, and she is just incredible. So she's going to be talking about short-term rentals. What does she do? How she does it? She's such a beautiful, beautiful soul. I believe very fortunate. She shares unconditionally. She doesn't hold back anything. And let's introduce our most beautiful guest today, Marietta Truth, by the way, a music performance, an educator, incredible person. Marietta, is all yours, my friend.
Why, thank you very much, Naft. So happy to be here, and what wonderful speakers that have preceded me. My goodness, so much wonderful information, Navtash. And I remember meeting you in Toronto many years ago and actually becoming part of your group there actually for a year. I really enjoyed traveling to Toronto, and I was overwhelmed by all the wonderful information that I got from you and the guests that you have and here you have wonderful guests again. So this has been a treat for me. I know I tried to get on your show, well, your event last month. For some reason, it didn't work, but I'm so happy to be here today. And yes, I'm really specializing in the short-term rental industry. I do both long and short-term rentals in the Niagara region, but I really enjoy the short-term rentals. And I started that in 2000. So I've had 20 years going into my 21st year of experience with the short-term rentals. And certainly it is a strategy that not many people knew about until Airbnb came on the scene and it became a little bit more a household word. But once upon a time when you had a short-term rental like I did, I had a bed and breakfast and I have a cottage rental, both in the town, in the lovely town in the Niagara region. And there is a big difference between the two. Many people think it's really easy to get into the short-term rental business and it's a breeze compared to long-term rentals, Navtash, but they're two completely different business models. And many people aren't realizing that the rules and regulations that affect the long-term rentals are completely separate from the short-term rentals if you are licensed and if you are actually going through the various listing sites such as Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, TripAdvisor, etc. So when I started in 2000, you didn't have any of these listing sites around. You built your own website. I belonged to an association. I had to get licensed because where I am, we have to get licensed for our short-term rentals. You pay a fee every year. The fire department comes in, the bylaw officer comes in to make sure everything is up and up as far as accepting guests short term. So I had to build my own website because that's what you did in those days. And people came through the door, they would find you, they would Google you. That was very important to have a website in those days because people would Google you and they would come and make a reservation and you took care of accepting the reservation, you know, either taking their credit cards or they would pay in cash or send a check. Where now it's become so much more sophisticated. Where through the listing sites such as Airbnb, let's take that for instance, they collect the fees and they send it to you once the guest has arrived and left. Booking.com, you collect the fees and you send it to them. Expedia, the same thing. You collect the fees and send it to them. So in one way, it's easier because actually you're on their listing sites and they have the marketing power of millions of dollars. So many, many people can see your property, and not that many people are going on Google to find short-term rentals, let's say in the Niagara region, Niagara Falls, Niagara Lake, you know, St. Catharines. So they go directly to these listing sites. So when somebody says to me, are you Airbnb-ing it? I said, you mean I run a short-term rental business? Yes, I do. I'm not Airbnb-ing anything. That is a listing site. And what I'm finding is even the municipalities get mixed up, say, so, you know, what about Airbnb? I go there and I try and straighten them out saying, look, Airbnb is a listing site. So what you're talking about is short-term rentals. Could be a vacation rental, could be a bed and breakfast, could be a cottage rental, you know, could be suites. Whatever it is. What it means is people are staying there short term. They're not staying for a year. They may be staying there for a night, 2 nights, 28 days. That's usually what's considered a short-term rental. And why people want to get into the short-term rental business is because people stay short-term and they leave. Not like the long-term rentals, which we have so much difficulty with in Ontario with the Landlord and Tenant Board, where people can live in your home for years on end and not pay. Well, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me as a business, that you allow people to live in your home and you can't evict them for whatever reason, whether it's the pandemic or whatever other reason there is that people come up with. Where short term, you will find that people don't stay a long term, and they also pay a lot more money to stay there for 1 month or for 1 day or 2 days or a week or a month, rather than going through the long term where you have a set fee every month and people pay that. The reason many people are transitioning from long-term rentals to short-term rentals is precisely because of the Landlord and Tenant Board, because they are not being fair to the landlord, and the landlords are, quite frankly, very tired of having to put up with tenants that aren't paying paying you your due to pay your mortgage. So people are transitioning to short-term rentals. But there is a word of caution here, which is what's happening with short-term rentals is that the government is getting wise on this. And what they do is make it very difficult, whether it's in your town, your city, or whatever, to go ahead with short-term rentals. And you can see this happening in Toronto, where a lot of the investors went into the direct short-term rental business and listed their properties, basically condos, on Airbnb. And what happened is the government has stepped in and says, no, you can't do short-term rentals here anymore. Or the condo board stepped in and said, no, you can't do short-term rentals here anymore. So that's why you have such a large number of condos on the market now, is because with regular tenants, the owners can't afford to keep their condos because they had overpaid for the condos in the first place. And the only reason they overpaid was because they could see that Airbnb could bring a lot more money to their market than a long-term rental. So that's why you have so many condos on the market now. So what I suggest to anyone that wants to get into the short-term rental business is get a house, find out wherever you're going to open up your short-term rental, whether that be a bed and breakfast or cottage rental or vacation rental. Find out, go to City Hall and ask them, can I legally run a short-term rental business here? If they say no, then walk away with it, or just stay with long-term rentals. If they say yes, but you have to get a license, that's fine. So get a license. There's nothing wrong with getting a license. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, right? And if it does, then maybe that's not the place you should be in or the type of business you should be in. So that's one thing, is make sure that if you're going to be starting the short-term rental business, that you actually check out with the town, with the city hall in the town, or wherever you're going. Can I legally run a short-term rental business? The next thing is, be aware that the short-term rental business is not that profitable all year round. It basically is like in the Niagara region, it basically starts in May and goes until the end of October. That's our season. If you get anything beyond that, you're lucky. And what's interesting is when I first started 20 years ago, I had people coming all year round. Now, with the change in, I think what it is the baby boomers aren't traveling as much, and the new generation doesn't have as much money as the baby boomers had. So they only go on weekends and usually on a Saturday, or maybe a Friday and a Saturday, or they come down because, it's the summertime and they go cycling and they go to the wineries here in the Niagara region, or they're coming down for a wedding, or they may even go to the Shaw Festival, although many of the young people don't even know what the Shaw Festival is all about. They usually come down for the wineries or Niagara Falls, and they spend a weekend. So be aware that as an investment, it may not be the best investment for you, because there's so much more work you have to do with the short-term rentals. So you have to hire a cleaning staff. You have to also completely furnish a short-term rental business. People can't come to 4 empty walls. With a long-term rental, they bring their furniture. With a short-term rental, you have to provide the furniture. So not only are you purchasing the property, but you have to furnish it. And then you have to manage it. And then you have to market it. It's not for everyone, right? Okay, so it's a little bit easier with Airbnb, but I caution you again. Many places have been shut down by Airbnb themselves. So there, and this is something I learned about 3 years ago, which really frightened me when I heard about that, because I have never heard it happening through any other listing sites. I've been with Booking.com now for about 12 years now. I have never heard anyone complaining about Booking.com that they shut them down. But I have heard many Airbnb properties that were even super hosts, that they were completely shut down. So if you're only relying on one booking site, such as Airbnb, and they shut you down, guess what? You're out of business again. So not only are you out of business because you're relying so heavily on the listing sites, and especially Airbnb, that's not always playing a fair game, but the government can change the laws like they did in Toronto. So up until now, it was okay for you to run a short-term rental in Toronto. The new laws just came out in 2021 that no, you can't do it anymore unless it's a principal residence. So what are you supposed to do? So here you've spent maybe $500,000 to $1 million on a property, and you were really counting on Airbnb to be there for you. And nope, they're not there for you because the government has stopped. So I always say that if you're going to be going into something new, do find a mentor. And I'm so glad you mentioned, Navtaj, about mentors, how important they are. And I really, you know, as you know, I have many Facebook groups, and I used to have groups that would meet in the Niagara region once a month. But my Facebook groups, I'm always telling the people there that you should be getting mentors, get a coach, learn the business before you go into it, before you get into trouble, before you start losing money. So when I started real estate, which was in 2000, I got a mentor right away. And then I joined groups just like Navtaj's groups and many others. I would talk to other people that were much more successful and had much more experience than I had in both the long term and the short term, because I did both at the same time. And I paid for courses. And right now, since 2020 and 2021, I'm watching YouTube videos by the hundreds of hours to learn. I'm reaching out to my mentors, because I have mentors in many aspects of my business. I'm always learning. And I host master classes of real estate investors who would want to go that extra mile of becoming more educated, like how are you going to learn to do a short-term rental business or a long-term rental business, unless you talk to somebody who's been doing it and someone who's gone through the hard times. So I'm really surprised, Navtaj, of how few people actually want to sign up for masterminds or courses, or even go and watch YouTube, my YouTube channel, which is Real Estate Media News Network. Or even come on Facebook. It costs absolutely nothing to come on Facebook and join my groups and ask questions there. But they seem to think that they don't need education. The other thing that I'm really surprised is that most of them don't even know they have a business. This is the problem. Most of them don't even know they have a business. They have no idea that they have a business. So I'm not going to talk any longer, because I know you have many other great speakers, but certainly if anyone wants to chat with me, I can answer questions there, or they can reach out to me. You've given them my email. Thank you very much, Navtaj. My phone number, if you want to join my mastermind, you're welcome to join. I'm always happy to have more members.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Really appreciate it. That's Maria Recruit, by the way. She's around a beautiful, beautiful person, as I mentioned before. And we will be speaking to her definitely again. We're definitely inviting her back on a different topic, actually.
Thank you very much.
Moving forward, thanks, Maria. Appreciate it. Moving forward, what is happening with interest rates? How many of you know that there is such thing called 0% interest rate, but not in Canada, in Denmark only? 20 years of mortgages at 0% only, and only in Denmark. So let me invite you to my special brother from another mother, David Grossman. Are you there, sir? David Grossman, sir. David?
Yeah. Hi there. I've been trying to unmute. The system's a little slow today. I understand we don't have video, but that's okay. We can hear everybody. A lot of great presenters today. Navtaj, nice job. Great way to kick off the year. What a crowd! Wow, you got like something like 60 people are on. So maybe your Zoom is being overwhelmed. So thanks for having me on, Navtaj. It's always a pleasure to be part of this of your monthly meetings. Very much appreciate. I met lots of great people. Talked to a lot of great people from your terrific network. So it's always a pleasure. So Navtaj asked me to talk about mortgages in Canada in 2021. So I made a few notes. Of course, first thing people always want to know is, well, what's happening with rates? What's the future of rates? Where are they looking? So, I mean, the Canadian government said late last year that they thought that rates were going to hold at least for another couple of years. But, if there's one thing that last year has showed us, as Barry Lebo mentioned earlier, is nobody really knows what's going to happen. I mean, the Bank of Canada has control over overnight rates, which impact your variable rate. But even then, there could be a lot of pressure on them to increase rates. If the economy was to pick up and heat up, they would have to increase rates. And also fixed rates are basically, governed by market forces. So depending on what happens with bond yields, which has to do with people's confidence in the economy, and the stock market, when they pull their money out of bonds and put them into stock market, that's when mortgage rates can go up. So with one thing we learned last year is that nobody knows what's going to happen. As Barry mentioned, you can sit at one end of the table and make an argument for why things are going to go to hell in a handbasket, and on the other hand, why things are going to continue to look good going forward. So, but I think, what is it, the Serenity's Prayer or something like that tells you, there's certain things you can impact in life, and there's things that you cannot. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, and the key is to know the difference, accept the things you can't change, and focus on the things you can change. Where are the opportunities? Because that's what we're not going to affect monetary policy, but we can look for business opportunities, and that's of course what this group is all about. So a couple of things, though, when we look at the market and we look at debt. Because I looked into this very recently because I thought it would be worth looking. I was having a casual chat with somebody about the government's actions and the fact that I met new neighbors. I mentioned I moved to Wasaga. I was chatting with my new neighbor. He works for an employment agency, and he said, we've never had so many jobs available, and people don't want the jobs because some of them are making more money on the CERB than they would be by going to work. So I got involved with somebody online in the chat, and they just said, well, the government did what it had to do. You're putting people out of work by closing everything down, and people need to eat. People need a roof over their head, and there's a lot of truth to that. However, I would remind people that our government needs to be held accountable. There was around $600 billion in debt. So I looked at what's the impact of all of these government programs. How is it impacting? And the answer is that it's roughly another $500 billion, another $500 billion in debt. $500 billion is being spent to support people during COVID. So that means that the total debt in Canada is nearly doubling. That's a lot of money, folks. And guess what? My kids and your kids are going to be paying for this for the next 100 years. I understand that England just paid off their World War I and World War II debt in the last 10 years or so. They finally finished making payments. And you know, one thing I didn't realize is that the government has an agenda to keep interest rates low, not only to keep the economy uh, buoyant, but also because the cost of of the debt is impacted by interest rates. Um, so they can manage to make payments. But wow, folks, you know, we've talked for a lot of years about paying down the debt, balancing the budget. It's a lot of new debt. So the government does need to be held accountable. You know, recently, I'm sure many of you heard Rod Phillips. He's the Ontario finance minister. Okay, so he's a guy who, you know, the buck sort of stops with him here in Ontario when it comes to money. Well, if you know the story, he was found to have been traveling to the Caribbean in early December. I think he made his plans just before the lockdown, and he was found out. He ended up resigning. So we can't just willy-nilly be writing checks because the long-term risk is significant. But again, let's focus on the things that we can impact. So what is happening in mortgages? I mentioned it in our last meeting, the government is revamping the shared equity mortgage. That program was a bit of a dog to start with, and it might be a little bit better. We'll hear more about it in the spring. But it should improve slightly. People ask me a lot of times, they say, how do I know how much mortgage I'm going to qualify? Well, I'll tell you the rule of thumb. I mention this in almost every conversation that I have with people about mortgages. The rule of thumb is that you're going to qualify for approximately 5 times your income. So if you make $100,000 a year, you might qualify for a mortgage of around $100,000. Of course, we're talking about bank here. We're talking about institutional lenders. So if you're self-employed, though, of course, the banks will be looking at your net income. So, you know, you might be a commissioned life insurance agent making $250,000 a year, but if you're writing all kinds of expenses off, it's the net income. If you're very aggressive in how you do your taxes and what you're writing off, you can end up reporting much less money. But we have lenders who will look at gross commissions. The banks don't do business that way. The banks are always going to ask for your tax returns and notices of assessments and look at your net income, your bottom line income. That's why it is important to have a mortgage broker that you can talk to, especially if you're self-employed. And if you own multiple properties, what's the impact of having multiple properties? Well, here's how I explain it to people. If you have investment properties, you take 80% of your rental income from that property. And if after taking 80% of it, your rental income still exceeds your monthly property taxes and mortgage payments, then more or less that property is a wash and we can almost ignore it. If you start to get to a point where you have many properties, some banks are going to get turned off, but we do have lenders who will still consider it, even if you have a good performing portfolio and you've exceeded what the bank is going to allow. Be sure to talk to a mortgage broker. There's other factors, of course, that have to be considered, and that is the amount of debts that you have outside of the mortgage. So if you're looking for a mortgage and you come to me and you say, oh yeah, you know, I just bought a Porsche and I've got $1,000, $1,200 a month a lease obligation, that's going to bite into your maximum mortgage. So, you know, I always tell young people, be cautious about that kind of thing, because you know, if you want to get out there in the real estate market, that can really take a bite out of what you're going to qualify for. Of course, if you're buying a condo, condo fees have to be considered. So you really do need to talk to a mortgage broker if you want to expand your portfolio. If you're buying properties that you plan on fixing up and then either refinancing or selling, You might need private money to start with because institutional lenders don't typically like properties if they're in a state of disrepair. But sometimes when they're in a state of disrepair, that's when you get your best deal. So you might need to use a private lender. You need to have some capital going in. I know I see a lot of people out there and they're saying, oh, you can buy real estate with no money down and all that kind of stuff. Okay, like we had lenders that were doing zero down mortgages a few years back on 40-year amortizations. Well, we just don't have that anymore. And there's, I know that there's people who think we can trick the system, we can do this, we can do that, but it's the exception rather than the rule. I will just tell you that. And that is really what I have to offer today. So if there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, brother from another, Navtaj, thank you for very much for having me
Great. Thanks, David.
on your day.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Rock Your Mortgage is
I think
not
there's a-
David Grossman, my friends. Another incredible guy. You can talk to him, please, anytime. Thanks, David.
Thanks so much, Navtaj. Thanks, everybody. All the best.
Moving forward, due to our system we have, I believe, David, if you can unmute yourself, thank you. Because we have different system today, instead of having a regular meeting, we have some different things set up and not aware of it, but we're gonna continue regardless. We got a lot of exciting stuff to share with you. Number one, who wanna buy the property in Alberta? Anybody can recognize this gentleman? Alberta mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio going up in the auction. It's worth 28.5 million bucks. I believe it's gonna go for less than $3 million. Is that a good deal? 30 cents on a dollar. Incredible amount of piece of property coming in for auction January 22nd, more or less about 2 weeks from today. I'd like to share some information with you. RSP, in case you are not aware of it, this is what you can contribute this time. Just be aware, utilize your RSP for 2021. Make sure you're talking to your accountant or CPA, and you can contribute up to 18% of your income. Now this amount has been increased to $27,230 in 2020. It's a great shelter tax account if you know how to utilize it. Self-directed RSP can be utilized for number one, buying your principal residence. Number two, it can be utilized to invest in private mortgages. You can invest in stock market, GIC, and other options. Again, all the rules and regulations are regulated by Canada Revenue Agency, CRA.ca. Make sure you check it out. Next thing I'm going to talk about briefly about TFSA, another account. This is tax-free savings account. So now your limit is $6,000. And by the time if you have been contributing, you can contribute up to $69,500 in 2020. And whatever the amount interest you earn is tax-free. Please check your CPA and CRA, and this money can also be invested in Canadian real estate mortgages. So just make sure you have the information from the proper source. Moving forward, New Year's. Now, there are $400 tax deduction available for you. Majority of us have been working from home. I'm sure your CPA will inform you, but it's good to know in case he doesn't. Let them know, hey, I might be eligible to get a tax deduction of $400. This is something which we have to be keeping our eyes wide open. Canadians are defaulting. Now we are in the lockdown again one more time. A lot of Canadian families are in trouble. The delinquency rate, the default rate of Canadian mortgages are going up since 2016. These are the facts. Those who want to know exactly what's happening, please go to the Canadian Bankers Association's website and check under the column delinquent mortgages though. Again, I'll be keeping you informed every month. These floodgates have opened up slightly. We picked up 2 properties. I'll be sharing with you how we picked up these two properties recently. And even though market is a bit tight and the courts are not really open, but I believe by June, July, August, a lot of these things are going to become more or less normal though. Here is something what we are forecasting 2021. Toronto market is supposed to go up by 5%. I believe will be a little bit higher. Again, these are the projections based upon so-called experts, and some